Hello guys, I want to share with you something concerning leadership or serving, especially in the kingdom of God. Just recently I've been reading from the Gospel of Matthew where Jesus tells his disciples after they get into the debate who's going to be the greatest about the fact that he came on this earth to serve, not to be served. Christian leadership is different than the leadership in the company and the leadership in an organization. In the Christian leadership, Jesus sets a model that's slightly different from the world. Though I appreciate a lot of leadership books and a lot of leadership experts who have a lot to offer, human wisdom and wisdom of this age that we can apply and take advantage of. But the whole kingdom of Jesus is slightly different. Well, it's actually completely different. It's upside down kingdom. If you want to be great, you have to become a servant. If you want to live, you have to die. If you want to receive, you have to give. And so it's a completely different kingdom than the kingdoms of this world. And so it's important that we take Jesus and what he teaches concerning serving and concerning leadership in the church. The first thing I want to mention is that Christian leadership is not about leading. Christian leadership, in first and foremost, is about following. Jesus did not call his disciples to leadership. He called them to followership. I know there's no word like that, but we just came up with one. He called them to follow him. And a lot of people, where they get confused or where they get really struggle is that they don't realize that it's not about you knowing how to lead, it's you knowing how to follow. If you can't follow God, if you can't follow another leader, if you cannot follow orders, if you cannot follow commands, if you cannot follow suggestions, you can't be a good leader, because in Christian leadership, it's about following more than it's about leading. The second component is that Christ is the example. Christ's likeness leads to servanthood. Jesus did not come to be served, but to serve. So Jesus tells us that to be like Christ is to be like a servant. To be like Christ is not just to heal the sick. To be like Christ is not just to give prophetic words that are accurate. To be like Christ is not just expel demons. To be like Christ is to live with this attitude and to live with this mindset of a servant. Jesus was not a doormat. Jesus was not simply a person who was allowing people, take advantage of him and all of that, but he was a person who lived his life serving others. One of the greatest examples of that is when he washed his disciples' feet. When he came down on this earth and took on a human form, being God, he didn't deny his divinity in being a man, but he added to his divinity by becoming a man. And so that speaks of humility, and that speaks of servanthood. The Old Testament has an amazing example of what it's like to be a servant. When a slave, after a while, when he was able to be released from his master, and that talks about in Exodus chapter 21 verses 1 all the way till verse 6, and then the slave who falls in love with his master. Now, a lot of times slavery in those days were people who became slaves because of the economical position in their family, and they couldn't afford to live on their own, so they submitted themselves as slaves for a season. And then God says that at particular times they were allowed to be released from that slavery and go start their own life. And this slave who was in love with his master, who was in love with his family, what he would do is he would actually allow the master to pierce one of his ears and make him a bond servant, meaning a slave for life. And this wasn't forced. This was out of love. And that is really the example of what it means to become a servant leader in the Christian community. It's when you are a bond servant of Jesus Christ, when you are a servant of Jesus for life, and you do it out of love. You don't do it because you're told. You don't do it because you're pushed, pressured, or manipulated. And so a few things that I want to draw from that is that servanthood is not about slavery. Servanthood, it's a volunteer thing. We're motivated from within by the love of God. We're not mandated, we are not manipulated, and we are not pressured, guilt-tripped, or demanded. It's a choice we make. It's not something that somebody else, nobody can make you into a servant. You can make yourself into a servant by being motivated by the love of God, by the love for God. Secondly is that this servanthood, leadership servanthood, it's not a cult-like. For example, some people become, and this is prevalent in Christian circles today, where we develop cults. Cults, what I mean is that we develop this huge obsession with this person and we're willing to do anything for them, this man of God or this woman of God. And that's not what servanthood is about, because servanthood is you are Christ-like, not cult-like. You're not obsessed with an individual God is using. You are obsessed with Jesus who died on the cross for you, and that is extremely different. We're serving in the spirit of Him who died for us, loves us, and today makes intercession for us. And we resemble that spirit. And we serve in the church, we serve in the ministry. We might be serving under a pastor who is not known or famous or not even a big church. It doesn't matter, because we are serving God in the spirit of Jesus Christ. There was an instance in book of Revelation. It honestly, one time it was a huge shock for me and also a revelation. When John, the revelator, who spent time with Jesus, who knew Jesus, encounters this angel. What we have to understand is the book of Revelation was given to John through an angel. So from Jesus to John through an angel. So the angel of the Lord took John to all of these places, explained things to John. In book of Revelation 19:10, John tries to worship an angel. And then again in chapter 22 verse 8 and verse 9, he tries to worship an angel again. Now John knew better. Like, that's a blasphemy, that's wrong to worship an angel. Angel is a created being. And John, who knew that Jesus is God, he knew that angel is not God. He tries to worship him. And I'm reading that, I'm like, how could you, John? But honestly, how many times we find ourselves in very similar shoes? Which sense? When somebody presents a message, when somebody is used so powerfully by God, their ministry is majestic, their message is marvelous, that honestly we get intoxicated. We get so distracted from the main person who sent that message, Jesus Christ. We get so wrapped up in the messenger that we forget it's about the one that sent that message, Jesus. And the message itself, the message can be so powerful, the miracles can be so powerful, the ministry can be so powerful, that the recipients can fall in love and actually idolize the messenger. We can fall prey to that. In fact, a lot of us are guilty of making anointed men of God into idols. A lot of us are guilty of making them into celebrities, making them into something God never intended them to be. Because the message they carry is so powerful and so marvelous that we can actually develop a cult out of following them instead of falling in love with Jesus. And I'm not saying, not pointing fingers at anybody. I'm just letting you know that the danger lies there. Even John fell trapped to that. The message was so glorious. The messenger was so powerful. But the messenger was simply a UPS guy delivering a package. Now, it doesn't matter if it's UPS, FedEx, or USPS for those of you living in the United States. We don't idolize the delivery person. We get excited about the package. We must understand every messenger of God, every preacher, every servant is a delivery person. It's about the package, not about the messenger.